Aulii Silva, how are you doing today?
Hi, David. I'm great. Thanks. Thanks for having me on your show.
Tell me where you are right now. Are you on Oahu,
Yep, I'm on Oahu. Um,
where you were
Living,
born and raised?
born and raised, working, built a career here, raised a son here. Yep.
Where do you work?
Leeward Community College.
Excellent. And you're a researcher. You're an academic, right?
Well, yep. I started out as a counselor and now I do research grants and program development.
Excellent. Well, you and I last spoke at least in person, at our 35th high school reunion in Honolulu. You, like me, graduated from Punahou School in 1988. We've seen each other, a couple of times since then, but really not at all. And so, to be honest, even though we knew each other in high school, I just don't know all that much about you and your background and kind of your history. And so,
Well,
why don't we start with your family, and let's start on your dad's side. Who are the Silvas? Where are they from? Tell me the story.
well, thanks. Yeah, the Silva. Silva is like sort of the equivalent of Smith or Wong, right? Like it's such a common name. And to be honest, I don't know that much about them. My father is pure Portuguese, his parents are Portuguese, and my grandfather was an orphan. So, when people ask me about whether I'm related to so and so Silva, I mean, I have a hard time answering that question because he didn't know his parents beyond childhood. So I'm doing a lot within all of my ancestries. So I'm looking at uh, my mother's side, and there's Japanese, Chinese, and Hawaiian on that side, and then there's Portuguese with my dad. And
Was there anything in your household that was definitely Portuguese that you remember that you can talk about?
oh yeah, actually, there were a lot of religious symbols. Growing up Catholic, there's a lot of religious things. There was the traditional foods at Christmas. There were malasadas for like real malasadas, not from Leonard's. There were Easter sweetbreads. Yeah, I mean, there were Holy Ghost festivals in the Punch Bowl area.
How Catholic were you?
I think growing up, I was enough Catholic to go through the grade school sacraments. Um, I did pretty well in the mandatory religious classes. Um, I think leaving sixth grade, coming across the street literally to Punahou, and then seeing all the Protestant founding families and that whole shift. I mean, it wasn't because of coming to Punahou that I started moving away. I think it was more looking at church history and church contemporary issues that I started to see a lot that doesn't sit well with me.
Did the Portuguese side of your family ever talk about why they originally came to Hawaii? Do you have any sense of the immigration story?
There was plantation work on both sides of my grandparents. They were plantation workers on Big Island, like Kona area, and I believe on my paternal side, I believe it's, or on my dad's father's side, I believe it's Kauai. But it was plantation work.
Were there people in your family that spoke pidgin?
Yeah, but frowned upon.
Really? Talk about that.
I think both my parents' side, they were really they prioritized education. They had very meager, modest educations. Eighth grade, I think by the time my grandmother was in eighth grade level, was the end of her schooling. On my mom's side, I think she was raised by somebody who only finished eighth grade, and so um, high school, finishing high school was sort of a big deal by the time it was my grandfather's generation. Finishing at St. Louis was a big deal. And then my mother finished at Sacred Hearts Academy. And so, finishing school and being a good student was very important. And so uh, we could speak Pidgin. I did speak Pidgin. I still speak Pidgin. But I think they wanted to have proper English spoken at home. And there's another educational history of suppressing uh, Hawaiian language and Pidgin in the public school history of Hawaii, which is actually very damaging and traumatic. So I'm an empowered Pidgin speaker, and I don't yeah, I like to use it when it's authentic, like with people that will speak it and don't just want to sample it. If you wanted to look of a certain better status, I think you're using better English, but it was imposed. It wasn't something that people chose for themselves. I think it was imposed by other people who had other standards. And a lot of those families came from Punahou families. I mean, Punahou families created a lot of that school policies and governmental laws and suppression things. They were doing a lot of damage culturally across Hawaii. I was born into the Hawaiian Renaissance era. My mother was finishing both her hula training and her Hawaiian Studies university degree at the same time when going through Catholic school. I was watching that happen.
It sounds like your parents did not stay together.
Oh yeah, no, they divorced when I was about 10.
Was that tough for you?
I think I understood it as better, healthier for them. I came from a single parent home. I mean, I just didn't make a lot of noise about it.
And we're going to get to the Hawaiian side of your family, but I mean, to what you're saying, I know that there was a relatively long period, even at Kamehameha schools, where they did not teach Hawaiian, right?
Yep. That was one of the subjects I researched in my PhD. Like, I wanted to look at who shaped policy and who chose curricula. And yeah, the intersections between Punahou and Kamehameha are old, and they're deep, and they're personal, between Charles Bishop and the Armstrong family at Punahou.
Let's talk about your mom's side of the family. That sounds like the real mixed plate, right?
Yeah, so my mom's mom was a Japanese American, and we didn't know her. Like, growing up, we didn't know anything much more than her name. And there was a whole post-World War II set of racist issues and things that went with that. So my mom was Hanide. My mom was Hanide by her paternal, her dad's mom. So her dad's mom, right? It's a Chinese Hawaiian, a little bit Howley family that raised her. So by growing up with somebody who was born in 1898, my mom was taught and got exposure to a lot of old things from Hawaiian and Chinese customs. So
to what extent did you feel Hawaiian growing up?
I think because my great grandmother was such a presence, and she knew how to make like feather lay, and she knew how to make the quilts, and she knew how to make like the lei, of course, and then the foods. I mean, I think we had a lot, even though she didn't speak it. So she was in that era of, right, the language was outlawed and banned at all schools, right, from 1896. I mean, she was in that era where her parents spoke Hawaiian, and none of the 12 kids could. So, I mean, my great grandmother had that experience. Hokulea was big. I remember that was one of the first things I remember doing out in the community, like going to see the canoe come home, Hokulea come home from Tahiti after the first sail. And I just remembered, needing to gather all our things and go down to the Diamond Head Lookout to watch her sail in.
How old were you when you started learning hula?
Oh, probably when I could stand up and like walk. My mom was teaching us some steps. Then I was studying off and on through high school, and then I've resumed even now. I enjoyed hula, and I enjoyed the fact that Punahou had a holoku pageant.
So you were a latchkey kid?
Mm-hmm.
So what was that like? You got home from school and just like walk me through sort of your independent latchkey days.
Well, I mean, sometimes we were going to my great grandmother's. I mean, there were those days, but if we're to uh, come all the way home to where my mom's apartment was, that was a place in Red Hill. I mean, it was a low income housing project in Red Hill, close to the current Kaiser Hospital. And that would be taking a bus, taking a city bus from Punahou out to Red Hill, and then walking into the housing area from the bus stop. I mean, it was just let yourself in, make something to eat, do your homework, wait till mom got home. So I mean, I think it was manageable.
Let's talk about your journey to Punahou. How did the opportunity come about, and what was sort of your deal in going to Punahou?
Oh my goodness, that's an interesting question because I didn't want to come to Punahou. And I wanted to go to Kamehameha. Like, I wanted nothing to do with Punahou. And my mother, who prioritized education above nearly everything else, I mean, she said, nope. I was on scholarship, and as another story about, having to work off the scholarship hours on campus and what came with that and feeling awkward about it. Even I remember trying to botch the interview. Like when we got to the interview stage, I wanted to like blow it and like not have an option to be at Punahou. And I remember trying to give horrible answers. Like these women who raised me, they were just always curious and soaking up knowledge from wherever. I think they were very open-minded. They had encyclopedias, probably in the days when people would sell encyclopedias door to door. Like they bought them. And so the living room, the parlor, like had this bookshelf that we would sit in front of. I remember sitting in front of the bookshelf of encyclopedias and trying to memorize things. I had spent 4 years looking at Punahou across the street from Marino, and coming across the street felt like a totally different world, like almost a different feeling, open. Like it was very vast and pretty, right? Gardens, lots of green space, lots of nice building, generally friendly people. But I could feel like these cliques all around. Like there were all these cliques where people were trying to sort of get sorted into a group.
Did you find a click?
I was paying attention to, I guess, who's like me, right? Like I was just trying to figure out who are the Hawaiians around here, and are there any Catholics around here? And I didn't really have other filters on besides that. If I had been more confident about making connections outside of the two filters that I used, like maybe I would have had a different way of fitting in, but I didn't have that either confidence or awareness at the time.
Was there an economic component to how you felt?
I think so. I think so. I mean, I just remember knowing how many hours I needed to work on campus. And then, the way I felt then was walking across either to report in to cafeteria duty, office duty, wherever I had to work. I think I remember feeling like my classmates are seeing me and they know what I'm doing because I'm, not hanging out with them. They're going and I'm going into work. And I guess I felt like it was shameful to do that walk.
So where were you working? Do you remember one of these jobs that you did to I guess fulfill the terms of your scholarship?
Oh yeah, I was in the bishop office, delivering messages. Remember when we had to hand carry messages into classrooms? That's one of the ways we
I
got.
haven't thought about that since probably the early 80s, but walk
I
us through.
know. I haven't either, but mechanically, I'm going through what I used to do to get my scholarships. The cafeteria, I would take the milk from the walk-in refrigerators and bring tall stacks of the crates out and start stacking milk. I would make the meals for the president's lunch, the president's gatherings. Like I was helping. I got a sense of how to value my education more, like because I was contributing my sweat equity to it.
You talked about, walking across campus to these jobs and feeling self-conscious. While you were working, did you interact with other students, and did you feel like they were perceiving you in a way that you did not want to be perceived?
Man, so two parts to that question, or my answer to that question. One was I really loved the other students who were working. I got to know several other students who were reporting into work, especially at the cafeteria. There was a few of us doing that work. But one of the things I dreaded, especially the time that the milk stacking job was scheduled, was when everyone in our class was taking the math exams. So I dreaded them because I was going in with my fellow classmates who were taking math tests. And I don't know what they thought, but I felt kind of shame because I'm like, okay, well, I'm the only one standing here doing work and not taking a math test, right? So I don't know why it worked that way, but I was scheduled to work during our grade's math testing.
If it makes you feel any better, I once got an F-13 on a math test in that cafeteria. I don't know if that was your fault. It's probably my fault.
That's terrible.
I remember those math tests. Punahou did have a lot of cliques, certainly in high school. You could almost identify them by their location and by their cast of characters. But were there any cliques that you would avoid without naming names?
There were cliques, I should just say, that I was intimidated by.
Guys or girls?
I think this one was mixed. I mean, I think this was a co-ed group of just everyone was beautiful and cool and, got invited to the parties. I mean, that was just an intimidating area.
Were there any topics, teachers, or situations where you felt you had kind of an intellectual breakthrough?
Mr. Jalewski, for composition class, having him for composition class, because I came in freshman year being told that I needed to go to the writing center and get a tutor. Like I could not get better than a C paper. But taking his composition class gave me, I think, and by junior year, I was feeling more confident, probably because of the feedback he was giving me. And by the time senior year was coming around, I applied to be in that Hawks group, right? The writing tutors group that I needed in freshman year. And it was really neat. The breakthrough was he supported my application. I think he needed to have a recommendation or something. And I got into Liz Foster's class to be a Hawk. And so the breakthrough was coming from needing a tutor to being a tutor.
And the Hawks, of course, what did that stand for?
Helpful Advanced Writing Kit. Like I've published things and I'm still working on clear writing. It never ends.
We already talked about the Honolulu pageant, but just talk about sort of what that meant to you, the emotions that of performing in that, and sort of like what it still means to you.
Oh, no, thanks. I think it was really nice to be able to see the whole campus really embrace hula and sharing hula. I was always striving because there was a court. There was a court in the front that you had to audition for. And in those days, you also had to be part Hawaiian to be in that court. I didn't get in the first time, but I got in for the remainder of high school. So sophomore, junior, senior year, I got into being a princess. I got the nerve once I was selected as a princess to ask Kavika Fairbanks to be the kahili bearer. And so for 2 years, he and I were wearing the color of Ni'ihau, the light blue color of Ni'ihau together. And it was just a nice way to get to know Kavika. And when I see those pictures from high school of us being in the same color satin together, it just brings back a lot of happy memories of him.
And of course, unfortunately, Kavika Fairbanks passed away shortly after graduation. You mentioned wishing that you were more confident in high school. We all wish that we were more confident in high school. But by the time you were a senior and you're about to graduate, how did you feel about yourself? How would you evolved, personally and intellectually?
I think I didn't feel intellectually very confident. I think I felt pretty well versed through high school at being a campus helper. Like, it was Mr. Metcalf that really let me uh, get acquainted with his office, like what it was like to sit in the dean's chair. And I think I volunteered to help out doing things, or at least occupying the space when I didn't have a clique to go run to. Like, I felt confident enough to see the campus in an operational way, but intellectually, like, I don't think I felt confident at all. I think I felt um prepared to go on, like learning beyond high school. I was a kind of B-ish student. Like, it took effort to get the B's, and it wasn't easy to achieve B's. I was never an A student in any subject. So I think intellectually, I didn't have a lot of confidence for many more years after that. I was going to college in a state and on a campus I had never seen before. So, I mean, I was still not academically like off the charts anywhere until maybe my PhD. Like, that was pretty good.
That probably
But
took some work to get a PhD. I'm going to guess that took some academic rigor to get there.
oh God,
So you figured it out, right?
I figured out what I wanted to study, and I figured out that I had enough professional experience to have the cred to say it. And like, I had straight A's except for the math class.